What happens when science meets something it can't explain? When a lab result refuses to match any known human pattern? And when a bloodline thought extinct begins to write its own history again? June 2011. Glacier National Park, Montana. A forest ranger named David Harrow was conducting a routine inspection of restricted territory near Hollow Creek. At 5:47 a.m., he radioed the station. "I'm seeing people out here. A group. Female. Not moving." The transmission ended abruptly. Search teams reached the location 2 hours later. In a clearing near the edge of the forest, they found a perfect circle burned into the grass, roughly 10 meters across. Inside the circle stood 7 women, barefoot, facing inward. At the center lay the body of a young girl. No signs of violence except for shallow markings carved into her forearms, a repeating symbol resembling the number 6 written in a spiral. All 7 women were unresponsive, appearing in a trance-like state. Their clothing matched historical descriptions from the Hollow Creek case. Long gray dresses made of coarse linen. When approached, they turned simultaneously toward the investigators but made no attempt to flee. Their pulse and temperature were normal. Their eyes were described as unusually reflective. The deceased girl, estimated age 15, showed no evidence of struggle or trauma. Her blood, however, exhibited an anomaly that halted the examination entirely. Under ultraviolet light, it emitted a faint blue luminescence, not a reflection but an internal reaction. Lab reports later confirmed no known chemical or biological cause. Within 48 hours, the FBI assumed jurisdiction. The operation was codenamed Northern Line, the same title found on Dr. Lovell's documents decades earlier. The 7 women were transported to a classified medical facility in Washington state. Their DNA matched the Lovell mitochondrial sequence with near-perfect accuracy. Each carried a distinct variation of the same genetic marker, one that appeared designed, not inherited. Agents returning to the scene uncovered a series of shallow caves nearby. Inside, they found makeshift sanctuaries, walls lined with photographs of identical women spanning decades, candles melted into the stone, and traces of medical equipment corroded by time. Among the debris lay surgical scalpels, syringes, and metal trays engraved with the initials A.L. One wall bore a Latin inscription, Linea Borealis, the Northern Line. By August, the Bureau had confirmed at least 12 such sites across Montana and Idaho. Each contained evidence of recent human activity, footprints, candle wax, and fragments of bone. The connection between the groups remained unclear, but the genetic data suggested a single source. On September 2nd, an internal memo circulated through the Bureau's medical division. It summarized all findings from the investigation up to that point. The report contained one highlighted paragraph, a note from Agent Wright, who had overseen both the Hollow Creek recovery and the current operation. It read, "The results are consistent with accelerated cellular replication patterns first documented in the Lovell line. The female subjects exhibit synchronized biological cycles and active hormonal alignment consistent with gestation. Their structure remains stable. Their behavior remains calm." And then, below the printed summary, handwritten in pen, one final line, "They are breeding again." In January 2014, St. Helena Regional Hospital in northern Montana admitted an unidentified woman during a snowstorm. She had no identification, no medical record, and refused to answer most questions. When asked her name, she replied once, quietly, "Anna." She was approximately 30 years old, thin, with pale skin and abnormally low body temperature. Within an hour of arrival, doctors determined she was in advanced labor. The delivery began at 2:18 a.m. under the supervision of Dr. Lauren Patel. Complications arose immediately: weak pulse, erratic contractions, and almost no bleeding despite full dilation. At 3:02 a.m., the infant was delivered stillborn. The staff noted the skin had a faint bluish hue that appeared to shift under the fluorescent light. Attempts at resuscitation failed. The child was pronounced dead at 3:11 a.m. The mother showed little reaction. She stared at the ceiling for several minutes and then whispered something that the nurse could not understand. When Dr. Patel returned with the chart, The woman repeated the words clearly. "She's not dead. She's the Dawn." Standard procedures were followed. The child's body was transferred to the hospital morgue for autopsy. The mother was stabilized and kept under observation. She refused food, spoke little, and occasionally asked if the others had arrived. When questioned, she gave no explanation. That night, at approximately 1:40 a.m., security cameras recorded two unidentified women entering the hospital through a side door. Both wore long gray dresses and head coverings that obscured their faces. They moved directly toward the morgue. The footage ended when the hallway lights flickered and went out for 11 seconds. When power returned, the cold storage drawer containing the infant's remains was empty. No forced entry, no sign of struggle. The following morning, the woman who had called herself Anna was found unresponsive in her bed. Vital signs were absent. Toxicology showed no foreign substances. The attending nurse stated that her body temperature at the time of death was 23 degrees Celsius, far below survivable limits. Yet there was no sign of hypothermia. Within minutes, faint condensation formed on the window near her bed. Not from heat, but from cold radiating outward. A federal agent arrived 2 days later with orders to secure all medical samples. DNA analysis confirmed a direct match to the Lovell genetic line. The child's tissue samples revealed extreme inbreeding, a genetic bottleneck consistent with long-term closed reproduction. More alarming was the mutation discovered in the blood, identical to the Luminous compound found in the 2011 Glacier Park case. The material emitted trace bioluminescence when exposed to ultraviolet light. Chemical isolation failed to determine its source. Officially, the hospital's record listed the event as maternal collapse following neonatal death. Unofficially, internal bureau correspondence referred to it by another name, the new birth. 3 weeks later, the morgue's night attendant, who had worked that shift, contacted local police. He claimed to have seen the two women again, standing across the road from the hospital just before dawn. When he called out, they turned and walked toward the tree line. The taller one carried something in her arms wrapped in gray fabric. By the time officers arrived, the snow was undisturbed. No prints, no sign of passage. The bureau sealed the report, marking it confidential. Ongoing line observation. The final page contained a single handwritten note. No burial confirmed. Subject likely reclassified under Northern Line protocol. By 2016, the Lovell investigation had evolved into a closed federal program. All files were reclassified under the designation Northern Line Division, overseen by a task force operating out of Anchorage, Alaska. The official purpose: monitoring of inherited genetic anomalies in remote populations. In reality, the project's focus was singular: the descendants of the Lovell bloodline. Satellite surveillance identified recurring anomalies across the northern states, thermal signatures in uninhabited zones, short-range radio bursts carrying coded biological data, and irregular power draws in areas officially unconnected to the grid. Every lead ended the same way: abandoned camps, extinguished fires, traces of sterile blood with identical DNA markers. In 2018, a reconnaissance drone captured footage near the Yukon border. The camera followed a faint light moving through the valley, a line of individuals walking in silence, each carrying a small container emitting the same pale blue glow seen in prior incidents. When agents arrived 40 minutes later, the ground was empty. Only heat residue remained, and footprints that matched every known member of the Hollow Creek sequence. The Bureau's internal report described the pattern as migratory. The subjects were moving north. In 2021, an unmapped structure was located under the ice shelf near Barrow. Inside, investigators discovered an active generator, incubator equipment, and multiple metallic pods, each labeled with a Roman numeral. One was open. The interior was lined with cloth. In the center lay an imprint the size of a newborn. DNA analysis from the site confirmed what the agents already suspected. The material inside the pods matched the Luminous blood compound exactly. Replication was no longer a theory. It was operational. The final entry in the recovered field journal came from Agent Wright, the same name that had appeared on reports since the 1970s. It was dated March 3, 2022, the day before the division was officially dissolved. Most of the text was redacted, but one paragraph survived. They have reached the water. The ice no longer stops them. The sequence is complete. We were looking for an origin story, but what we found is direction. When the team returned to the facility 2 weeks later, it was gone. No structure, no equipment, no trace. Just a smooth layer of ice stretching to the horizon. The Northern Line file was sealed permanently. No further operations authorized. But last winter, a Norwegian research vessel recorded a faint radio signal off the Arctic coast. A pulse repeating every 7 seconds, transmitting on an obsolete military frequency once used by Dr. Abraham Lovell's team in 1955. Decoded, it formed 4 words. "The blood remembers you."